Before and during World War II, the Imperial Japanese military forced an estimated 200,000 to 400,000 young women and children into violent sexual slavery. Euphemistically named comfort women, these sex slaves were acquired a number of ways, including outright capture or under threat of violence. The majority of comfort women were Korean, Chinese, and Filipina, but they could be found across all Japanese-occupied territories. These young women were deemed inhuman because of their inferior nationalities, and therefore seen as tools.
What a brilliant film. Starting us off with hearing about the atrocities of the comfort women. They really didn't hide anything in this piece, just the truth of the depravity of the total disregard for human life and respect for human beings was really difficult to hear about, but really important to hear about. And I think the linking of an artist's journey in this, of trying to make sense of this past and make sense of her identity through this in her journey in going to the motherland, I thought was brilliantly done, and it was very moving. It's this wonderful intersection of the past and the present forming a united force to to produce art and to produce learning for the future of bringing awareness and trying to find peace. The interviews with the comfort women blew me away. The fact that they had found people to share the difficulties that they have endured, the abuses and the traumas, and how freely they shared with us. And then to see the artist taking it all in, we almost got to feel like we were her in this instant as the viewer, taking all of this in, synthesizing it. But just a really well-crafted film with a key eye for storytelling, for the accompanying visuals that always helped facilitate along the main message of the piece.
This documentary short is about finding peace. This is about sexual assault, sexual slavery, self harm recovery, cultural identities, biracial identities, art therapies, turning our emotional turmoil into tangible beauties. Art being a means of escape, mental illnesses, rage, grief, overcoming the experience of concentration camps, the forcing of children soldiers, overcoming suicide, communicating through, as an art form, an expression of a way to articulate things well. Happiness comes at the end of suffering. We see the experiences that shaped this group of women, and we get this beautiful visual of their perspectives on these tales through the use of visual art. Being inspired by fellow activists and taking care of these statues or monuments that combat ignorance, spreading the awareness of these stories, overcoming shame. Every woman has suffered in some way. This documentary shares this aspect of women's suffrage and how we overcome it.
Gives a lot of historical insight on comfort women, which were used as a tool to appease troops' sexual appetites during the war versus Japan and Korea in an effort to systematize rape. And we see an emotional response of this woman who is looking for her own identity as a Korean American woman through stories of these trials these women faced. And then hearing directly from the comfort woman in their ordeals was heavy. And your response mirrored hers. As a viewer, the emotion that she felt, I mirrored that. And I was like, I get that. And her own mental struggles, which are shown in her art, which she speaks about, without any fear. She also recognizes that in doing this project and learning about these comfort women, which, for her started off as an intellectualized, oh, this is something I'll learn about, turned into something that she feels has saved her life. Because in connecting with this material, it has led her to a passion. It has led her to a sense of peace through this project, and it has led her to think and deal with her own mental struggles. And I think that there's a power in realizing that what you're seeing what someone else has gone through and seeing them overcome something that seems so horrific can also make something that you're going to that seems so horrific in the moment seem smaller. And I think it brings everything sort of full circle into resolution. Like, I mean, hearing the stories of these women made any of my problems seem really small.
I don't think this is a story I've ever heard about ever, let alone as part of the history of World War II. And I think it's so important that you're telling it, and so important that it's getting out there, because it really is a voice and a viewpoint that could easily be lost. Yeah, I've never heard about this. I've never seen this kind of hardship. I think it's a very jarring part of history, and I think I'm glad that you're telling it. I'm sure it must have been very difficult to document, but you do a great job of laying out these stories and furthering the knowledge of what has happened here, and making sure it doesn't happen again.
What a thoughtfully constructed documentary on just such a horrific just time in general, and you forget about all the little extra pieces of horror that took place. I've heard of Comfort Women before. I've briefly familiar with the subject. This documentary just does a great deep dive into that topic, and yeah, it's thoroughly horrific. The stories out of there are just also obviously like, horrific. To hear those stories firsthand through this documentary was it's the first time for me hearing it from a perspective like that. Uh, just really eye opening. Just you just feel gutted watching it, but I think it's important because that was history. We need to be well aware of it. We need to make sure we don't repeat it. So for that reason alone, I'm glad this documentary exists, just to remind people that just whatever depraved ideas you think that might be happen in the future has probably already happened. Let's not try it. Let's not repeat it. Yeah, so this documentary does a great job at just laying that all out there. The just all the horrors they went through, and hopefully serves as a reminder and a sort of cautionary tale that let's just never go down that road again.
We take life for granted, and I don't think anyone has ever been taught about the women, to the point where I don't even want to imagine the atrocities they were going through if Nazis thought it was horrible. This is a documentary that I think is well informed, well educated about things that are going on in the world, and for Yuna to find the positivity in herself when her mental illness gets down. It's a story that says things can be worse. She could have been born in a different time period. She could have been one of these women. It could have been all those what ifs. It's like what these women went through should never have happened. It's completely horrid, and it is something that we're never told about. We're told the basics of World War II, and when they talk about the atrocities of it, they focus on the Holocaust. They very rarely say what was the Japanese American side. And I'd say this is probably as horrific as it can get. Women living in fear of being sexually assaulted day in and day out, even by doctors. This story is, and I just love that her artwork got an exhibit. I hope it shows more so people can learn about who the Comfort Women were and continue to fight for their voices to be heard and their stories to be told.
There are things that are just so horrific and so inhuman that it's hard to wrap your mind around it. And because you don't want to believe that another human being could be that soulless. So I really commend the survivors, the women who were able to go through this. Calling it an ordeal seems so trivial. But I also commend the filmmakers for documenting this. This way, nobody ever forgets that this happened, and history can't repeat itself. So I thought that they did such an incredible job on this. It was hard to watch. I actually started to cry on babies were used for bayonet practice. That pretty much got to me. But that's what you wanted. And I'm glad that it got to me, because it should get to everybody. I mean, really, we have to have empathy, and this was so incredibly impactful, and the way that they did it was impactful. The past footage that they used, everything.